Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race to you.
Every day is a happy day when you're listening to the Boob Tube Boys, a podcast where three white middle-aged hermits try to convince you they are TV show experts. That's what we're going to do today with Happy Days, as you just heard with the intro. Brian Vaughn, this is white middle-aged Brian Vaughn. He's here to talk about Happy Days.
Whoa!
And Van Lee, also white middle-aged.
Is the lyric "My cycle hums"?
Yeah.
I actually never heard the words.
I don't care for that.
Huh.
Why?
Good for you. I don't know. I just don't like the sound of some doo-wop guy having his cycle hum everywhere.
Never mind. I agree with you because when I think cycle hum, I think like Rob Halford.
Okay. Now I can get behind.
That's what I want. I don't want a doo-wop group.
No.
However, Rob Halford led doo-wop group. I'd listen to it.
It would be different.
Yeah.
And because he can do so many different voices when he sings.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's screamo metal.
He is a good singer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I think he could pull off the doo-wop thing.
Let me tell you, Painkiller, it's a good-ass song.
Yeah.
I should also mention that I am white middle-aged Spencer Hendricks. I'm hosting the episode. I picked the show Happy Days. We'll be doing 2 episodes of it this weekend next. And I had never seen it before. Brian has seen all of them.
A lot of it. Not as much as I thought, though, by the way. Upon encountering the IMDb, I've seen mostly early episodes.
Sure.
Which I think is what Nick at Night had contracted at the time.
There are, of course, 11 seasons of it, so it would be really hard to
Maybe
have
7, 8 too many? Something like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe 11.
I'm going to get into kind of I think the period that the show was actually considered good, and it wasn't all of it by any means, but it did go for those 11 seasons from 74 to when Brian and I were born, 1984. Just a little before Van.
I have some really controversial opinions about what I prefer in my Happy Days episodes. As we go along, no need to talk about it now. The show will provide examples.
Of course.
But let me ask this. So Happy Days is a show
They're yours and mine.
in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about the 50s.
Yes,
so this
correct.
is a very that 70s
Sure.
show.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I think is really interesting that it wasn't that far removed from the 50s and people were already like, I miss the 50s.
Well, same with that 70s
yeah,
show.
it's
when that was
such a
made in the
strange
90s.
concept, though. I don't get
It's
it.
pure nostalgia, and I think we're seeing it overtake our entire pop culture landscape now. But this was more novel then, so of course Happy Days was a sensation. Now, nostalgia is our whole mainstream entertainment base, right? It's just remakes, retreads, or revamped ideas.
It seems like people, as they get older, have a yearning for the time period that they were young in that they just left behind, and they want to relive it a little bit. We talked about that with the Waltons a lot. I got to bring it up early, where
Metal Gear Solid.
a bygone era that they kind of missed, that they feel like is gone forever because it is, and they want to relive it through TV shows. And Happy Days is the ultimate example of that, where it's the quintessential idealized 50s American life. Of course, this is Midwestern Milwaukee, so it's just a real sleepy sort of town where everyone's happy and it's the 50s and things are good.
I can't help but love when it was the 50s and everyone had bathrooms that they talked into. I don't know. The nostalgic thing, like, yes, I understand nostalgia is a powerful tool, and I like nostalgic things, but also,
Not me, fuck
this is
that shit.
gross. Like, so much of this stuff is too much.
I agree with you, Van. It is really treacly. And I watched Happy Days a lot in rerun syndication on Nick at Night as a child, and I enjoyed it fine. I expected to like it a little bit more than I did watching it for the podcast, but I think my bias against this sort of nostalgia entertainment came through even stronger under the harsh lens of today.
I would say that at one point in my younger years, I was pretty enraptured by the 50s from a historical standpoint. I used to think it was really like the coolest decade, like a lot of people. And I have lost a lot of that as I've gotten older. And more, I see the 50s as just I always did, to be fair, but I see it as a big lie. And I see it as that it was actually a pretty horrible time in most ways. And honestly, what was good about it was the sense that people were able to buy a bunch of stupid shit and houses and refrigerators and electronics and live this fake American life.
While other people suffer.
Exactly. And
What's that sound like?
Just a small percentage of people were like, oh, I'm living the American dream, which is where kind of the American dream comes from, is this time period. And no one was happy anyway, but it was also not really like that for that many people. But we associate it, of course, as just being like everyone was happy in the 50s, which is absurd. So I have become, I'd say over time, just kind of like, I don't need to hear anything else about the 50s
I actually
anymore.
do think that was a big part of your initial fascination with 50s too, though. Like, I
Sure.
remember talking to you about it in high school, and we were talking about the movie Pleasantville, which has a lot of those themes in it.
Yeah. I think it's inescapable when you're talking about the 50s themes. And I think some people, like the boomer generation, I'm sure, in some way, do always have some kind of reverence for that time
Yeah,
period.
and you'll always hear how safe it was. Back then, you could trust people.
You
know,
could leave your doors unlocked at
yeah,
night.
you could just say, come in if someone knocks, and I think Happy Days will go out of its way to prove you should not let that person in.
I think a big part of it is that, of course, in the 50s, that's when television first really started coming around. So therefore, there wasn't a lot of content out there. So everything everyone watched in the 50s up through the 70s was this happy-go-lucky, men and women can't sleep in the same bed, but everyone's smiling, that kind of thing. So even though there are a lot of people who probably recognize that, the 50s sucked for a lot of people too, they still have that nostalgia factor that tells them that everything was perfect. And of course, in America, it was a boom time. It's after World War II. America had taken over as the center of the world. And so a lot of people did get stuff that they normally wouldn't have if they were born in any other decade.
Yes.
And it's just the idea of the 50s are
You're
perfect
shaking
bothers
your
me.
fist at
I'm
this.
angry. I hate it so
It's
much.
jarring to think of this show running concurrently with the Mary Tyler Moore Show, even.
Yeah.
I know this is a show talking about the past, but even in the way that it's made, which I found shoddy, I'll say, it just feels kind of antiquated.
I will very briefly go into the synopsis of Happy Days, and then we'll start doing the cast. And as always, after that point, we'll be cleared to go into our first episode, which is Season 3, Episode 10, A Date with Fonzie. So Happy Days, set in 1950s and 1960s Milwaukee, the series tells the story of the Cunningham family, Father Howard, Mother Marion, son Richie, and daughter Joni. There's also another son in the first couple of seasons, I think it was, that Chuck.
Yeah.
And just he disappears.
Chuck Lorre.
He just, him.
He went on to make a bunch of sitcoms worse than this.
He completely disappears and doesn't get referenced because they didn't really have enough spots for him. But
Good riddance, Chuck. Yeah, because they're like, oh, we got these other fucking weirdos that hang around from
they had
other
enough.
families.
I guess Chuck mostly just dribbled a basketball and he didn't have anything to do, so they just got rid of him.
The same thing that happened to Jamie Foxworth on Family Matters, and those two shows actually had a lot of the same executives involved.
I wonder what the deal is with the people who create the shows stuffing too many people in there and later are like, shit, we don't have room
Why
for
wouldn't
that.
you just fully blossom, like fully develop the characters you have and then add as you see fit? Oh, speaking of Family Matters, the last show we covered and this show, Happy Days, I want to know if you guys think this is weird. The
Yes.
episode The episode of Happy Days we're covering today aired in 1975. The episode of Family Matters that we covered first aired in 1991. The difference between Happy Days and Family Matters is the same as the difference between right now and when Breaking Bad started.
Wow.
I think what I'm really trying to just hammer into perhaps our own skulls is what Spencer opened the show with. We are middle-aged.
Yeah, we
Is
sure
it?
are.
It just freaked me out realizing how time works yet again.
That is a substantial gap. And Breaking Bad does feel like kind of a different era in TV history
Yeah.
to me. Even.
Well, it was good.
Yeah.
That's one thing. This show,
Well, we're getting
jury's
into that bit.
out.
Don't jump ahead of us too much. Son Richie, daughter Joni, Chuck, who's never mentioned. Howard owns a hardware store while Marion stays at home, of course.
And they have this giant house.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Everyone
a
did.
billion kids.
All the white families did anyway.
Well, sure.
Richie's best friends are Potsy and Ralph.
Yeah. Played by Anson Williams and Danny Most. This is just stuff I remember. This is not in my notes at all. I have no cast notes.
Fonzie Fonzarelli is the local bad boy riding a motorcycle and filling his
Boy.
days with fixing cars and dating girls. He's actually a genius mechanic, which we don't really see in the 2 episodes we cover.
Later, he has like a mechanic school or something.
Yeah, well, good for the Fonz.
That's how the Fonz is actualized eventually.
And during the show's run, Richie leaves home to join the U.S. Army. That happens in like season 7. The last 3 or 4 seasons, it becomes Fonzie's show and Richie leaves. No more Ron Howard.
Really?
Yep. I didn't know that until I looked this up here.
Ron Howard went off to, of course, do real stuff.
Directing. Yeah, he was like, I think I've had enough.
He also acted in American Graffiti right after this, or kind of during
That was,
it, right?
yes, actually, that was a big reason why this show even happened, because they filmed the pilot and no one was really interested, but George Lucas saw Ron Howard in the pilot and was like, I want that guy in American Graffiti.
How would he say that, Brian?
I'm looking for a bit of an innocent, if you will, someone who can fulfill sort of the all-American 1950s vibrations that I'm feeling in my script. What should I name him? Zeb Clomdon?
No, this isn't one of those kinds of movies,
This one's
George.
a real people movie.
So that actually rekindled ABC's interest. Then they picked it up, and the rest is history.
Is this show as successful as I think it was?
For a
Like, it was
time,
popular?
It has started fine because it was originally geared around Richie, Ron Howard's innocent teenage exploits with Potsy and Ralph. And then it actually started to lose its appeal really quickly after the first couple seasons until they added more Fonzie in it. And then they
got big again.
They made it into like a full-blown comedy starring mostly Fonzie, and it was the number one show on TV by 1976.
And
Only
that's
for
what
a
we'll
few
be
years.
talking about next week, that version of the show.
Sure. In season 3, it's right when they first started using more of Fonzie. So we see a lot of Fonzie in both, but this is the very beginning of that where they were getting away from Richie a little bit more.
And the plots really are considerably different.
Very different.
In this era of the show, it is more teens in the 50s concerns, or in Fonz's case, 30-year-olds in the 50s.
It was created by Gary Marshall, who was
Boo.
who was a writer on the Lucy Show, Dick Van Dyke Show, and then also the television adaptation of The Odd Couple. And then, of course, he created all of the spinoffs that came from Happy Days and Happy Days itself, Laverne and Shirley, Blansky's Beauties, and Mork and Mindy.
Blansky's Beauties?
Yeah, that was, I think, Howard's cousin that comes up in one of the episodes, and she also got a spinoff show.
Wow, generous of them. Gary Marshall also responsible for all of those relationship collage movies, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day. You know all those
Nope.
things? You guys know what I'm talking about?
I didn't even see that when I looked at his creations, but I saw he did a lot of
And
stuff.
that might be executive producing, but he was like the guy that was like, you know what we can make a lot of money doing? Essentially, he figured that out. It's just
So
like,
what were the movies about?
it's like a built-in audience. They're like, he's done ones that aren't holidays too, but it shows like different couples in different situations. Sometimes they interact, like they interweave the
Okay.
stories. But
a real
they're-
Rashomon type.
if Rashomon was for, people's moms, that sort of thing.
Fair enough.
And by the end, everybody's romantic story reaches a conclusion.
Yeah, they kiss each other and everyone's happy forever.
Yeah.
I guarantee it.
Or not, but there's a reason and it doesn't feel bad. You don't feel dirty
Yeah,
about
they
it.
kissed someone else.
There will be kissing, starring Daniel Day-Lewis.
So we start with Richie Cunningham, who is, of course, Ron Howard. We all know all about Ron Howard, started as OP in the Andy Griffith Show and then directed a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't even write it down because everyone knows all about Ron Howard.
Name it one of the things he's directed. Saving Private Ryan.
Apollo 13.
I'm out of
Wait,
it.
Saving Private Ryan was directed by Spielberg. What did Ron Howard have to do with that?
I think he was involved. Him and Brian Grazer or whatever, they have that. They're like involved in all this stuff. With Steven Spielberg too, I think.
They're all little buds. Little redhead buds. I think only Ron Howard's a redhead.
Yeah, there's no way Steven Spielberg's ever had red
No.
hair.
Nope.
What other ones is he most known for? He's on like 50. Like,
No, that's Steven Spielberg. I almost said Jurassic Park.
The one that I mentioned, Apollo 13, is of course the one I know him from. He did that Rush movie about car racing from like 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Solo. A Star Wars
He
story.
did do Solo.
Yeah.
And he took Solo over.
Yeah, from the brothers. I can't remember.
Perhaps the guys that did the Lego movie, maybe, or something.
Gross.
I might be wrong about that, but
Everything is awesome.
yeah, it
He was
wasn't
the
though.
narrator in Arrested Development.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the best.
Of
I'm
course.
forgetting some really
No, there's
notable.
some
Yeah.
huge ones.
They're
yeah.
not usually my kind of movies.
I didn't write them down because when I looked at the list, I was like, everyone's heard of those, and I'm sure I'll think of them, and then I didn't. It's just he's everywhere.
He makes what I consider, and a lot of them, when you look at them, you're like, I've seen that,
Yeah.
but it didn't really stick.
No, it's not like none of them are like, oh my god, I love that movie.
He makes very middle of the road fare that is extremely competently made. I mean, Van, wouldn't you say that about Solo? Like, it's
Yeah.
just a really well-made thing, but it's not, that train sequence is cool. Like
It's a fun movie. I think it gets a lot of hate it doesn't deserve, but also it's not that
It's not
great.
going to blow your
fine.
mind or anything.
A Beautiful Mind.
There we go.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey one.
Both
He did
won
that.
Best Picture Oscars, I think.
Rush, The Da Vinci Code. That's a good example. Willow. I forgot he did Willow. By the way, you guys
I almost
know
spit took.
you did that.
I forgot about that as well.
that Willow series that came out. Do you guys know about this?
I knew that it existed.
Well, okay, so there's a whole controversy with it because Disney had Bob Iger took back over or something or other from the previous head, and they decided to write off Willow as a loss. So they can no longer show Willow on any platform. They can't sell DVDs with it. This is the series, the movie they can do whatever with. And it's gone. Unless you pirate it, you cannot watch that series. Now, here's the thing, though. The girlfriend, Katie, really liked the movie, as did I. So she wanted to watch the series, and we did. I found it to be one of the worst things I've ever watched. It was atrocious. And not because it was made poorly. It looked okay. The acting was okay in some cases. But it was mean-spirited, number one. And number two, a lot of like the newer actors they brought in were really bad at it. There's a princess who's supposed to be, I think, the character who she's an asshole, but she grows to be lovable by the end of it.
One of those.
She was such an asshole, I could not handle it. But there were things in that where you're introduced to this character who's supposed to be this noble protector of House Willow or whatever, and then he gets shot with an arrow and killed, and somebody makes a joke and then they move on. And it was just so mean-spirited. I found it to be awful. And I like Warwick Davis, and he was good in it, and there were some nice things, but I'm glad it's gone. But interesting story with that.
You're beginning to that. The phrasing was just immaculate, too, that someone decided it was time to write off Willow as a loss.
And
Which,
sure enough,
culturally, we've been doing for a while. Willow, I think, has had to pick up steam over time after video, right? Because I don't think it did that well.
no, and it was trashed by Ebert and Siskel and Ebert when
Yeah,
it came
I
out,
don't
and I
think
was
it-
surprised to hear that.
I don't think it was very well liked.
But kids loved it.
Yeah, I loved it.
So therefore,
My
it had
dad
that.
liked it for some reason. I think because there was a lot of smoke and dust and some monster types ideas.
Billy Barty.
Billy Barty,
He would
yeah.
go, the bones tell me nothing.
Man, I am going to one day compile a list of movies that my dad liked, and it will make no sense. And I will just read it.
Ron Howard. He did a lot of stuff. So much that I didn't even write it down.
Listeners, you may wonder why we're spending so much time on the filmography of Ron Howard. There won't be a whole lot to talk about when it comes to the actual episode of Happy Days we watch.
Oh, and we're getting really close to getting into that too. We're just going to do the cast, and then it's time to talk about mostly a nothing episode that has really kind of just two settings the entire time. We'll be going back and forth between two places, and then we'll be done talking about it.
I'm sure that's just Happy Days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had Arthur's and they had the Cunningham's house, and that's about,
And one
about
time
it.
they go to the beach and Fonzie jumps a shark. That stuff happens later, though.
So next we have Howard Cunningham, the father of Howard's Hardware Emporium store. That is Tom Bosley, who
Big melty face.
who
I
was
love
largely a stage actor, but did Murder, She Wrote and Father Dowling Mysteries. I didn't really see that, but he was the lead character in that.
Yeah, a lot of bit parts. He was in older shows.
I have heard that name so many times,
Yeah.
but I didn't really know who he was.
I knew his face when I saw him. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that big floppy face. I can see that one.
And then Marion Cunningham, the wife, the mother in the show, that's Marion Ross. She was in a couple episodes of Touched by an Angel, so you guys know.
Good for her.
She also did some voice acting in King of the Hill and SpongeBob SquarePants, and had a recurring role, I don't know what, in Gilmore Girls. Yeah,
You're
interesting.
both racking your brains.
Better do a
now.
rewatch.
Then there's Joni Cunningham, who is Erin Moran. She didn't do a whole lot and kind of got in a fight with all the cast and ended up estranged at one point. They had legal battles, but she made appearances in The Love Boat, Murder, She Wrote as well, and Diagnosis Murder.
She was not really in these two episodes. She had like one
Just
line.
little
and-
parts. I think she ended up becoming a more main character in marrying Chachi, who we meet next week.
Scott Baio.
Yep.
They both become much bigger parts of the show as other cast members start to leave and have other acting duties elsewhere.
Yeah, the classic sitcom that runs for way too long. They're like, all right, this guy's got to step up and play a whole different part now.
Scott Baio, we gotta put the whole show on his stupid shoulders.
People said that a lot.
I
Why?
actually forgot to put Scott Baio in my notes, but I was going to at the very end be like, of course, Chachi's Scott Baio, and I don't know who that is.
Wait a minute. Does that mean Joni Loves Chachi?
Mhm.
That's based off Happy Days
Oh,
too?
yes.
Everything's
That's one of the
fucking based off
spin-offs.
this show.
We're learning all this. Happy Days was, I guess, a huge part of pop culture.
Big cash cow.
Wow.
There's a lot of references over the years that I've seen in TV shows and movies or whatever that are Happy Days related that I wouldn't have gotten. And my whole life growing up, too, people were doing Fonzie impersonations, and I was like, what? Who's this Fonzie guy? What's the big deal?
That is actually what I was met with when I did a Fonzie impersonation in elementary school once. No one knew what I was talking about.
Yep.
Speaking of Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli, which is Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler was also in Arrested Development. He's in Barry. He had a bit part in Parks and Recreation for a couple seasons. He did a few movies, but he's mostly seems to have made his mark in TV shows and playing very different characters,
Mhm.
which Van mentioned before we recorded. than what we see in this.
And I find him super charming, and I think he's fun in this. I don't like the character because he's an asshole, but he's the kind of asshole that a lot of people will go, "Aw," and I don't do that shit. I can't. If you're an asshole, you're an asshole, and I don't like you for it. But anyway.
No amount of Riz is going to stop him from being an asshole.
Oh, but this is a lot of Riz, though.
It's an awful lot.
That's the thing. He's one of those guys.
Yeah.
And seeing it applied in a modern sense as an older guy as kind of a comedy doof, it actually makes more sense.
Sure. Now, let me ask this, though. I mean, he's skinny. He's black-haired. Like, he looks good for Henry Winkler. What did he do from Happy Days until being a short little gray-haired guy that I know him from? I feel like, did he do anything in the 80s and 90s?
He did some movies, but they weren't big roles. I really honestly don't think he found much of a career until he started doing the comedy stuff later on in life.
And like in Barry, he's phenomenal.
Yeah, he's
so good.
Everyone talks about how good he is in that show.
And he shows a little range there, too, that I don't know that he had as a younger actor.
I doubt he did.
Hey.
The enthusiasm in your eyes, it really stood out.
Well, I have my leather jacket on, so.
In the next week's episode, I had to put one of those in our audio clip, so we will have a Fonzie A moment coming up.
B.
And then there is, so Richie's friends. First is Potsy Weber, who, as Brian mentioned, is Anson Williams. Anson Williams actually was a TV show director of a lot of stuff, and we have seen at least one of them, which is Melrose Place. He directed for that show. He directed for Beverly Hills 90210, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, The Secret Life of the American Teenager. Are you getting the theme of the kind of shows?
Yeah, you know this
Anson
guy
Williams
knows
worked on?
how to fucking weave a hell of a yarn if he can do a Melrose Place and a, what is that?
American Teenager of Death or something. I don't know.
The Secret Life of a Teenage Witch.
You know what, though? If he's directing all these things, that means he's not in front of the camera. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I guess he
found
decided.
him awful in this.
It's kind of interesting how many of these actors did do directing stuff. That's kind of strange to me.
Potsy's presence, I find just,
Oh, he's an amazing singer, though, as we're about to find out.
he just has nothing, right?
It's just a blank shell, right?
Yeah.
Nothing there.
So you guys are bigger fans of Ralph Mouth, then?
Okay, can I take over for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
Don't like this. Don't like looking at this guy. Something about him. When they were making Happy Days, they said, oh, okay, we've got a cute little redhead. We got Ron Howard. He's got his big ears. He's adorable.
Okay.
Well, I'm getting there. And then they said, what is it, Ralph Mouth?
His name is Ralph Mouth.
I thought it was Ralph Mouth, as an orifice with which I speak.
Disgusting, Van. It's Ralph Mouth, like a normal name.
And then
Just
his
like
real
another
name.
Ralph, except with an M in the front of it.
What's it?
Donnie Most.
Donnie Least. But
It really looks like moist.
his face, it reactivated some sort of uncanny valley thing. And I don't like it. I don't like when he comes on the screen, and I don't like when he talks.
You don't like
what he does. It bothers me,
I'm
Brian.
gonna tell you one thing. You don't like this kind of looking guy.
I don't.
I've seen you have biases against this kind of looking guy before.
That's fine. I'm prepared to have that thrown against me. I just don't like this guy. What, you guys are acting like I'm so far out here. But you were like, I love Ralph
I
Mouth.
am pro Mouth.
I can't even fucking say the words because it's a dumb name.
He doesn't seem to do enough for me in these two episodes, and I just had no feelings on him at all.
I'll
But I
explain
agree.
this. This is all in relation to Potsy, though. This is a grading on the curve situation, which is you're always seeing Ralph and Potsy in tandem, and I mean always. Yet they never go where they should go with that storyline because it's the 1950s. However, Donnie Most is trying. And that comes through next to Potsy, who I think might be trying too, but I don't know if they told him this is airing, like on TV.
They thought maybe he's rehearsing.
Yeah, or maybe he thinks it's a play for his friends, but people can see this, Potsy, Anson.
Maybe he already was off in his own little world, like how when I'm behind the cameras, I'm going to do this a little differently here in this thing. He just couldn't focus on his craft because he was already thinking too far ahead.
Oh man, this is how we'll shoot the scene when Kimberly escapes the hospital explosion.
Don Most, by the way, had kind of an Aaron Moran thing where he was just in a few TV shows as a guest star.
Good riddance.
Including Chips, which is the California Highway
Highway Patrol. I don't know what the S is.
Also, one of the better things you can eat out of a bag.
Baywatch, and also The Love Boat as well, which someone else was in too.
This is a Ralph Mouth guy. He was in Baywatch.
He was.
What was he doing there? Being a second version of the sun?
I can't
so
imagine
bright?
it was a very big part.
He's not in bad shape.
Yeah, that's true. We see a lot of them next episode. Too much, I might add.
Yeah.
And then this episode specifically, I'm just going to get the guest stars out of the way here, and then we'll get ready to start this episode. But we have And I did not know this when I picked out the show. We have a couple of characters that were so popular from their appearance here, they got their own show that we mentioned earlier, Laverne and Shirley. So that's Laverne DeFazio, who is Penny Marshall. That's Gary Marshall's sister, actually, weirdly.
Oh,
And
a little nepotism going on. I see.
She was pretty cool, actually. She ended up directing A League of Their Own. And then Big before that, which was the first movie in the U.S. box office to gross $100 million.
That's cool.
Penny Marshall's cool.
She is a pretty capable actor,
I
too.
like her in this role. I
Yeah.
think she plays the character well. I think both of them are fine.
I agree.
And she gets even better at it. But it's here you see right away they have
charisma.
they're better than anyone on the in the regular Happy Days cast.
I can totally see why when the fans saw this episode and those characters came out and they're just guest stars and they're like, this is really cool.
Just like how we're going to have it happen next episode.
Who are these loose, wild women who work at the bottling plant? And seriously, you would rather watch a show based on those people.
It's pretty cool. And honestly, apparently the story of how these two act and their dynamic was based around a real life experience that Gary Marshall had when he was a kid, that he and his friends met these girls and they went to a coffee shop at 2 a.m. and the date got insulted by some random woman there and had Gary hold her coat while she beat the girl up. So he based these two around that experience. And they're just really interesting characters. So we also, of course, have Shirley Feeney, who was played by Cindy Williams. And she didn't have quite the career Penny Marshall did. She was in American Graffiti as well as some of the others, which was, again, George Lucas. And then Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation in 1973.
Which is really good. I watched it last year or the year before.
Did you happen to see her in it or notice? Okay.
I didn't.
It's probably a small part.
Yeah, that is a movie I would recommend that you watch and not watch Happy Days. If anyone was thinking about watching Happy Days.
So those two guest star in this episode, and it goes so well that they got their own show. And that's it. That's the main cast. There is another guest star in next week's episode that we will talk about when his time to appear happens.
And he's a bit of a big name.
A little bit. You may have heard of him. We haven't seen him in a good bleem or two now. So this episode, again, Date with Fonzie, is Fonzie tries to help Richie get out of his dating slump by setting up a double date with two girls he thinks will be perfect. This was season 3. It aired November 11th, 1975, just to give you an idea of the landscape.
Shout out to my brother. He was alive by then, barely.
Good for him.
Yeah, I wonder what he thought of this episode when it came on.
Wah.
I bet that is what he said about it. That's what I was saying about it when Happy Days was wrapping up, whenever I was born.
That's true. And me too. We open with Richie's band, I guess. I don't know if they had a thing all the time or they just performed here.
This happens every now and then.
So they are in a band.
Because time needs to be filled. I am 90% certain that's why this happens.
Okay.
What do you think they named the band? It would have to be something dumb from the 50s, so it'd be like...
Well, Potsy's the singer, so I think it'd be based around Potsy then.
It'd be like Potsy and the Whistleblowers.
It's pretty Potsy and the Wheeler Boys.
Yeah, that's a good one.
They're performing Great Balls of Fire at Arnold's.
Boo!
On Valentine's Day. You got the setting in mind here. It's Valentine's Day. They're at the Hangout Arnold's. They're playing their song. Everyone is having a swell time there and dancing it up, which you just did in the 50s. That was, I think, all you did.
All you could do was dance.
And they wrap up the song. Richie is actually really into it, and he dutifully begins to announce, okay, up next we're going to do. But Potsy and Ralph, they don't want to play any more songs. They're not here to do songs. They're here to pick up chicks.
And by the way, that was the absolute worst pretending to play music scene I've ever seen in my life.
Brutal.
Or ever will see. Ron Howard, who's the drummer, isn't even moving.
Of the bunch.
I really feel like he could have done a little bit better and making me feel like he was playing the drums.
Potsy had a John DeHart-like screen presence while singing, just staring dead-eyed into nowhere while looking kind of afraid.
Well, and Ralph, he played his piano part with his back to the keys.
Yeah, well,
how
that
good he
was
is.
showmanship.
He was playing too hard.
Danny Most really did that.
Well, and Ponzi scheme, whatever his name is, that voice of that who was singing, that's clearly not him. And it doesn't look like it would come out of his head.
No.
It was so off.
I don't see singer when I look at Potsy.
I don't see much.
What's his name again? Anson?
Anson.
What a weird name.
Isn't that a rank? Like ensign, lieutenant,
ensign or something.
I think it's pronounced ensign.
We don't. I don't know. Like I'm not really.
We're military people.
Yeah, we don't know that stuff. So Potsy and Ralph are done with the music. They want to cash in on this credit that they've earned through the evening from all these hot songs they played, and their band wants to go out there and mingle with the audience, where there's, of course, as you would expect, lots of ladies out there giving them eyes the whole night. In that very audience is Fonzie, who's out there with his girl Ramona, I think it's just a one episode thing here.
I have
think
to correct
Fonzie,
you. Every girl is technically Fonzie's girl
That's
in the
true.
world of Happy Days.
I think he has one who he's pretending to like more than the others in an episode.
yeah.
But not for long.
That's his bottom bitch.
We're about to be saying goodbye to Ramona, but initially
She
that's
dies.
who he's with. Fonzie initially wants more music, but he relents when he realizes the stoppage is devoted to the pursuit of females, because that's a good topic. It's at this point he says, hey, Ramona, go home. I mailed you a Valentine's Day card. Go wait for it. Kisses her, she leaves. We don't see Ramona ever again.
Killed by a drunk driver. Probably didn't have insurance.
It's what inspired a number of 50s songs about babies dying on ridges, stuff like that.
Where a singer has like super high falsetto, but
Yeah.
then there's also a second singer who goes brrr, and that's it.
Yep. That's what we would do if we were singing a 50s song about someone dying.
Yep.
So Potsy complains to Fonzie that Richie's too scared to initiate contact with all these girls out there, even though they've been eyeing him all night long. And Richie says, hey, we're here to play music. We have a duty to the kids, and I just don't think it's right to stop playing music and go talk to the girls. And Ralph says, that's the whole reason we're here. We're not here for the music or the money. We're here to pick up some chicks.
Which, verified by their performance.
And Fonzie sides with Potsy and Ralph in that and says, hey, the nerds are right. Why don't you guys go out there and talk to girls, and I'll talk some sense into Richie here. Potsy and Ralph approach the girls after determining a can't-miss game plan.
Wait a minute. What approach should we use?
They look bright. Use the subtle approach.
Gotcha.
Hey, girls.
Hi, want a neck in the parking lot?
That worked?
Where in reality, the women should be just abhorred at looking at these two, nonetheless deciding to go neck with them in the parking lot.
I think the better way to write this is the pepper spray comes out.
Right.
So Fonzie and Richie witness all this from afar, with Fonzie pointing out, there's still one unclaimed girl left, and she's all his. Richie says, no, it's not going to work. If I ask her, she's just going to say no. Basically, he's being a big old downer. He has no confidence.
Hey, Richie, go pick up the scraps over there. This show has a bad habit, and I know that that's part of the thing. It's trying to create this infantilized 1950s snow globe feeling, but still kind of gross, right?
Women are commodities.
Yeah, it just feels kind of weird.
They're like Pokemon. You got to catch them all. And then you leave them in the Pokeball, and then you don't never use them. You put them in the computer. It's Bill's computer, because it says someone's PC until you meet Bill, who has been transformed into a Pokemon. But then you push the button and he gets back to being Bill. He gives you a ticket to the SS Anne. So then you go board it, which you can then get HM cut from the Sea Captain, which allows you to cut bushes and get into different areas of the game. Should I keep going?
How do I get these women to evolve into their next forms?
You aren't that far off, because Fonzie just doesn't give up. When Richie's like, I don't want to. I don't want to do it, Fonzie. And he's like, you're going to do it. And just won't let it go until he gives up and does it.
There's a lot of one person says no and the other person doesn't take that for an answer.
That was more okay back then. So Richie does give in, but only to shout across the room without moving toward the girl, hey, you don't want to go out with me, do you? And the girl agrees that she does not want to go out with Richie.
I like how she doesn't even respond. She looks horrified and then looks down at the table.
Fonzie at this point has seen enough and is thoroughly disgusted with Richie, decides to escort him to his office, which is the guy's bathroom
Gross.
at Arnold's.
Fucking nasty. Why would you ever do that?
He seems to really be proud of it.
It's an accepted thing in the canon of the show that is a cool thing to be doing.
He's in a public restroom and he takes a lot of pride in it. He cleans it up and cares about how current the ladies' names on the wall are, if they're still available.
Yeah, well, we'll see how well he takes care of the place whenever there's an alien competition next week. Hint.
Richie, come on in here and step in some piss. We'll talk in my office.
Yeah, let's smell mouth shit while we talk about your romance life.
And you know it smells bad if it came from that
It
guy.
smells red and furry.
This is a really serious matter to Fonzie, and he actually opens with the threat of, I'm moving out, because Fonzie, of course, by this point has moved in with the Cunninghams and lives above their garage.
And that's important information to know about the Fonz, is that he sublets an above garage room from the Cunninghams.
It's a clever little trick, too, for the creators to be like, how can we ensure that Fonzie is in as many scenes as possible? Let's have him move in with the main characters.
You bring up a good point, Spencer. I wonder if he started there. Probably not.
He moves in, I think, earlier in this season.
Okay.
Because this is when they decided they needed more of Fonzie. So they're like, well, he's not really part of the main family, so we need him to be. What do we do? Hey, he moves in.
And I don't like that, because while I have no problem with living over someone's garage in a triangle like that, I've kind of done that.
Yeah.
I don't think Fawn should be doing that. This is a guy who should have a bit more mystique than that.
And I don't know that guy would want to. Doesn't he need a little more privacy to do
How
his
can
thing?
they not hear what he's doing?
Exactly. So anyway, he is upset about what Richie's doing now. He's being a big old nerd, and he's threatening that he's not going to live above the garage anymore because of this, because people are going to figure out Fonz lives above the garage of a nerd, I think is his fake headline or something. So no way can he allow himself to be so closely associated with Richie if he's going to be this way. And Richie says, hey, it's not my fault. I just broke up with Sharon fucking Myers, and we'd been going steady for 4 whole months. So I guess I'm just rusty. I've lost my groove, and I don't know how to ask girls out anymore. I'm not in practice. I'm in a dry spell.
And my pants are too high.
You know, if Sharon Myers was dating him, she must be a total rube. There's no way she's cool, right?
This is probably what would be uncool in the 50s, wearing the wrong poodle skirt.
Being slightly different than anyone else.
Yeah.
That would be uncool.
I like to think that maybe Sharon Myers was like a good reach for Richie. Like, you know, she was out of his league, but he managed to pull it off, and he knows he's never going to get that lucky again. So he's especially intimidated now to get back into the dating pool.
Okay, I like that backstory.
It's a possibility.
And they did date for 4 months, which
That's a long time.
when you're 17 is, that's a long time.
So this is when Fonzie, we kind of learn that he's really devoted to his office space, where he's going around cleaning the bathroom up, complaining about how dirty it is, while Richie is thinking about how hard it is to get back into the dating world. And all the while he's getting an epiphany. It's like, you know what? I am going to help you out, Richie. You're my pal. I'm going to take you to a place where there's all kinds of hot women of all ages, not just high school girls. Some are single, some are married. This place is incredible. It's the supermarket. And they're going to go tomorrow. The next scene, they are at the supermarket.
Where spare ribs are 19 cents a pound and pork chops are just $1.19
I wanted
each.
to climb in there.
I love 50s supermarkets. I mean, they didn't have anything like meat and fruits and vegetables, and everything's 5 cents and lots of cans, as we'll
The
see.
hand-painted signs are the best.
Oh, yeah.
I wish that was still a thing.
Yeah, I wish that could be like an entire job. Like, oh, I paint signs at supermarkets.
I paint signs for Price Cutter, you know. It's a great job.
I love it. The boys arrive at the local supermarket, and they're horny as fuck. Fonzie marvels at all the talent around them, as he calls it, and Richie worries that, hey, but aren't they kind of not here to look for dates, Fonzie?
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, that is true.
And
Leave them
Fonzie
alone.
says, hey, neither are you. You're not going to go up to them like that. You're going to find something to bond over in regard to the shopping experience. It's easy. It's obviously.
Do you like cans? Because you got some nice ones.
That is better than what he does.
Fonzie tells him, just act confused, and they're going to be so desperate to help you. They'll throw themselves at you, and this is really easy. Trust me. So Richie begins his adventure very nervously, approaching a serious-looking lady who's pawing at what to me looked like a loaf of really dark bread, just kind of staring at it in the wrapper.
Is this bread?
It's hard to tell.
But that's what would you be looking at bread for?
I don't know.
To see if there's any communists in there. It's the 50s.
Okay.
She's really eyeing it skeptically, too. She looks really grumpy about the whole experience, and Richie approaches her with this weird, I didn't put a soundbite of like, sort of laugh, and she's immediately creeped out by him
Whatever
because you
this
would
was,
be.
I wanted to just turn off my TV. I hated it. I know that Richie is supposed to be awkward in this scene, but it's horrible.
Yeah, it's in the whole concept, of course, of go up to a person at the supermarket who is shopping for groceries, probably for their family, and to try to hit on them is a really revolting concept.
And was this scripted for Richie to just not say anything here, really? It's really
'cause
weird.
He just does the chuckling. He picks up to connect with her what looked to me like some green rolls.
It's
like
a bag
dinner
of rolls,
And they're
definitely.
like kind of greenish, though.
They've been out a while.
So he picks them up. He's holding them in his hand like she's doing with her bread, and he tries to bond. He says, hey, have you ever used this?
Used this.
I did like that line.
And she says no. So immediately the plan's out the window concept.
And was this
He's supposed to be confused, but she is confused. So he decides to flip the script on its heel and is like, well, I have, and it's great. And she says, well, it's good, cool. And she's not impressed and pushes her cart away. So Richie actually gets a moment here to kind of collect himself because she's still shopping, goes in a little circle, and they end up beside each other again. And he tries a new approach. Hey, I need to hurry because the people on the yacht are waiting for me. Do you know where the caviar is?
The Milwaukee yacht that he has.
The actor's response to that when he says, I'm waiting on the yacht, where she has a huge eye roll, is pretty good, actually. So this thing doesn't go any better because she says, what kind of caviar are you looking for? And he's like, I don't know, instant. And she's like, just leave me alone, go ask someone else. So this is a total failure on the first attempt.
If he was on Price is Right, it would go. Boom, 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 boom,
It definitely would. It should have anyway.
Not the yodeling guy, though. You know, he goes up the hill.
Bob Barker?
Yes, yeah. And then he falls off the cliff occasionally. Not Bob Barker, though.
But meanwhile, Fonzie's in the frozen foods area watching all of this.
Like a creep.
Yeah, just kind of poking his head out there, disapprovingly, might I add, because it's not going well. You know what, though? He's not the only person watching Richie go about his craft here.
Thankfully.
Richie is moving his cart to kind of continue through this process, already a little dejected, and an old man catches his eye and calls him over. Tells him, you're going about this all wrong, in a conspiratorial tone. There's a gleam in his eye as he says this. He's obviously amused at the situation. Richie tries to deny it, but the old man just won't let up, insisting he can tell that Richie's here to pick up chicks. And yes, he uses that exact description.
Son, I can see it from the lump in your pants. You're horny as hell.
Richie finally confesses, and the old man assures him, hey, you're in the right place, and gives him some advice.
Well, you came to the right place. I do great here.
This is my first time.
I can tell. You're the worst.
Well, what do you think I should do?
Get out of here. No. That was just a little joke.
Oh.
Try the direct approach.
Direct approach?
Yeah, you see that cute girl there?
Yeah?
You want to meet her?
Yeah.
Knock over her cart.
This guy also, it should be noted, he has a big mustache and a corduroy hat.
He looks like Geraldo Rivera.
Yeah, but old.
But old, yeah, like if you saw him now. And then his advice is hurt the ladies you're trying to attract.
It takes quite an ominous turn at the end. The way he does that whole thing, the studio audience just eats up, and they cheer the shit out of him after that whole scene. After that little dialogue we just heard, they loved him.
The actor's very gleeful in his performance of it, I will say.
I actually did like
fun.
how he says the "get out of here"
Yeah,
when he
get
asks
outta
him what
here.
to do. He does a pretty good, and it's not even anybody. I thought maybe it was a well-known actor that did that, but just some old man actor.
I think he just kind of materialized on set, did his part, left, never heard from again.
And Spencer, you mentioned the audience's reaction. This is filmed in front of a live audience, supposedly.
Tom Bosley told
that.
us that at the start of this episode.
Yeah, Ron tells us next time. But I can't remember what show we covered. Maybe it was Everybody Loves Raymond, where I critiqued the laugh track.
It was Everybody Loves Raymond, yeah.
I don't know if they also added a laugh track or if this audience finds someone dropping a pin to be the funniest thing in the
you gotta
world.
remember, these shows are absurdly popular. People out there think this stuff is just, pants-shittingly funny.
It's insane because the studio audience is too much. They laugh nonstop. They don't ever quit. They don't lessen. It's bad.
You know the bursts are real to some degree because you can see the actors having to wait it out.
Yeah, they hit the beats well, the laughter at least.
And there are some, especially in next week's episode, there are some where you can hear individual people just completely losing their shit and making the whole show.
Well, that makes sense, though.
Of course.
Next week's episode is fucking hilarious.
There's also the thing that they do a lot of times in these shows where if you haven't seen, I think we talked about it with Urkel last week, where when you see a character for the first time in the episode, you have to stop it to give them the applause or whatever.
Kramer, same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this show too. So the studio audience does seem to play a pretty huge part.
And in Happy Days, it becomes almost every character, even though no one likes these characters, except for Fonzie.
So as the old man is imparting these pearls of wisdom, an older lady passes by and he cuts the train short there saying he's got to go to work. So we get a live demonstration of how he goes about this craft that he described. He loudly calls to the woman across the store and shoves his cart full speed at her. We don't actually see it, but we see the cart go off screen, hear a loud crashing sound, and then the very pleased old man is delighted that he made contact with the old lady.
He laid that cart into her. Like, she is hurt.
Especially because this is an older woman, and the glee on his face here, too. The actor's really giving it his all. Maybe this was his ploy to get bigger in Hollywood. He's like, I'm going to give it my all in this Happy Days walk-on role.
Sadly, it doesn't seem to have worked.
Probably died not that long
I was
after.
going to say, I don't see that guy surviving the 70s. And I don't know if he would have wanted to. Looking at him, he looks like he really found his look in that era, and that's probably the last one he wanted.
I'm going to burn out, not fade away.
So the old man eagerly approaches his kind of like prey or victim in this case.
Prey, victim, both.
Leaves Richie to absorb all this invaluable information.
I think this is exactly when Richie's innocence was forever lost.
In a seemingly positive turn of events, though, Richie doesn't even have to do anything at all for this next female interaction he's about to have. is a young woman in a large coat, makes eye contact with him, smiles invitingly, and compliments Ron Howard on how tall he is.
I looked it up actually.
Yeah,
after
did
you said
anyone
that,
do
'cause I was
that?
like, what? He's 5'9". So he's
Whoa.
little. He's not even big.
What is Winkler? 5'7"?
5'6". He's
okay.
tiny.
I
So
was gonna say-
compared to him, but also no one has ever said, wow, Ron Howard, you're so tall.
I just couldn't help but laugh about that because, I mean, I get it. We learn very quickly she has an ulterior motive anyway, but
It is funny.
the concept of her telling him that is especially noteworthy. So she says, wow, you're tall. Asks him to stand in front of her, and then just starts wildly shoplifting canned goods. And this is the fruit juice section. So she's shoving like a year's supply of fruit juice in her giant coat.
I need my high C.
And Richie realizes what she's up to and kind of openly debates out loud, turning her in, to which she says, well, if you do that, I'll have my brother break your legs.
This is the wrong debate. He should be openly debating whether to ask her out or not.
Yeah.
She clearly kind of,
She's interesting.
she is interesting and kind of, to some degree, has a little bit of charm to her.
Absolutely.
She's kind of interested. She's standing next to him,
I'll be
asking
honest,
for
though.
a favor.
This happens to me all the time. As an actual tall person,
People tell you to stand in front
to
of them.
steal constantly.
Really?
Over and over. No. But I do
I
get
believed it.
I constantly do
Help
get
me get
this.
this
That help
thing.
me get the
Yeah.
top shelf. It's happened to me like twice in the last week.
To be fair, little old ladies will ask anyone that. Like, I've been stopped too at stores. Like, can you
Plus,
get that?
people out probably walking have to draft off you.
That's true.
To the
They
sides.
get better, I don't know.
What is
What's
that?
the term for that?
NASCAR.
Yeah, better NASCAR off of me.
Torque.
Spoiler.
Acceleration.
Wedge.
Ricky Rudd.
These are all racing terms.
Do you know for 16 straight years, Ricky Rudd won at least one race a season,
That's
which is a
really
modern day
good.
NASCAR record?
You know, I actually did know that.
Do you have any statistics or factoids about mosquitoes?
Well, first of all, I'd say if you want to see that, you should go to bootuing.com. That's it.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there more slash?
And they go
something?
to About Us. I think it's /About Us, but I don't know. But just go to bootuing.com.
Yeah, I've got a little factoid, and it's all mine, not Van's, that
Mm.
mosquitoes, I always do that.
You don't even know it.
Mosquitoes can eat a pound of bats every day.
That's a lot of bats. Actually, it'd be one bat.
That's,
How big are these mosquitoes?
how little are these bats? Yeah, so bats will eat a lot of mosquitoes in a day, and I came up with that fact, and it's on bootuing.com.
Came up with it too. Like I compiled the scientific research.
Mhm.
I created bats and mosquitoes and made them eat each other.
Would you rather fight a pound of mosquitoes or a pound of bats? That's the big
Well,
question.
bats are
I'll
blind
fight
anyway.
the one bat that is a pound of bats, and I'll whoop its ass too.
I bet a bat would fuck you up, Brian.
No way! I will destroy this bat.
And remember, Brian has some experience with bats. You used
more
to run
than
into
anyone
'em.
here.
I like listeners who don't know that would
Yeah.
think, well, what is Brian doing in caves?
Mhm.
And we don't need to answer it.
No.
Superhero shit.
Some stuff is just better left a mystery on the Boob Tube Boys.
You know what? The worst, like, superhero, I don't know, special area is called the Brian Cave.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
worst
I don't
sounding
even know
one.
what the superpower would even be. It wouldn't be anything
snarky.
useful. All the things I'm good at, I have found, are not useful.
Oh, I don't know where I was in my notes now.
The bat and mosquito part.
Yeah, that part.
Oh, that's a whole page.
Well, fuck it. Let's just take a break then. We'll be back soon.
These are yours and mine. These happy days are yours and mine. Happy days.
So Richie's a little frazzled by this, but he does decide, okay, I'm going to get back to my main goal here, and just turns and flings his shopping cart into the first card he sees without looking to see even who it is. Well, it's Fonzie, as it turns out. So the two just kind of stand and stare at each other side by side in silence, and they both have come to the same conclusion, which is the supermarket thing just didn't work.
Fonzie takes a lot of guff from Richie okay and doesn't get mad about it.
Seems like he really likes Richie.
He does. He really wants him to turn out okay.
Like him.
You know how
Yeah.
you guys, when we were younger, would tolerate really awful people
I
because you
feel
thought
like
it
you
was
bring this
fun?
up sometimes.
I
yeah.
do
Yeah.
occasionally. That's kind of what I feel like this is, although I guess Richie isn't awful. But it has the same vibe, I think, in that the Fonz finds Richie cute, so he's just going to put up with
he's
his
a younger
bullshit.
person and he thinks, I see the good here. Whatever presence I can have that makes this a little better, maybe that's good to do.
We should probably mention, because I didn't get into ages, that the characters are only supposed to be a year apart, but
What?
of course Henry Winkler is like
30 at
nine
least.
years older than Ron Howard.
Who's already probably too old. for
Ron
this
Howard
role.
was born in like 54 and Henry Winkler is like 9 years younger, but yeah, so they're older, sorry. they're supposed to be like pretty much the same age, and they're clearly not. We can
Ron
tell
Howard looks 11 or 12. Henry Winkler looks 33.
And Ron Howard perpetually looked that age until the hair fell out.
Yeah. And even then, kind of, he just looked like a
Boyish
Benjamin
features.
Button.
that. He still
A little
has
bit.
that, yeah, that big boyish face.
Mhm.
And a boyish voice and boyish smile. I like the guy, Ron Howard. I feel like he would be a genial presence. Let's have him on the podcast. Van, send that email.
I'll do that. I'll be like, you can't invite your daughter, though.
Can you see if we can get Anson Williams on?
Is he dead?
No, he's one of the ones who is still alive. There's surprisingly a large amount of Happy Days characters who are not.
What if Tom Bosley were still alive?
That would be something.
Like big flappy face. He's 110 years old.
Yeah.
You say that, but Ed Asner only recently died.
That's true.
Although we did find out he was creepy young whenever he looked 63.
I really think there's something too, like previous generations just didn't age the same way. And you
No.
can really tell in some of these shows.
And the ones that lived longer, it's like they raced to look 50 and stayed there till they died.
Okay, so the supermarket, yeah, we can tell it didn't work out. None of the plans worked out. Fonzie's plan, no good. The old man's plan, no good. So Fonzie is aware, we got to try something else. And perhaps Richie's even more hopeless than he thought he was. But not to worry, because Fonzie has another plan, taking matters into his own hands. He's going to call 2 of his chicks. And as Brian said, every chick, every girl in the Happy Days universe is really one of Fonzie's girls.
You just have to know that when you watch this show going in. Like, imagine Milwaukee, a mid-sized American city, and imagine all the women in it, like half the people. All of them, on a whim, might have to go date Fonz.
Fonzie says he's going to call 2 of those out of his long list of them, and he's going to set up a double date. The next scene, this is later that same day. We're back at the Cunningham's house. You know what? I should give credit. This episode actually had a third location, and it wasn't just Arnold's and the Cunninghams. We got the supermarket,
Mhm.
which was the star of the show, in my opinion. Fonzie's got his little black book of dating with him.
Well, except it's not little at all. It's like
It's
a
huge.
blinder.
It's the phone book. Like I said, it's everyone in Milwaukee. I should also offer this disclaimer. Anyone looking to move to Milwaukee, just be forewarned.
If you're in the 50s, you have to be Fonzie's girl.
Yeah, you might get a late night telegram that says you up.
Well, and if you're in the 90s and you're a male, you might get eaten by Jeffrey Dahmer. So you got to
Right.
be careful.
Another problem. And right now, at present, I don't know, you might give up a hit to Christian Yelich.
2008, maybe Ryan Braun's there.
That's mostly what we know about Milwaukee
Beer.
is the Brewers.
Yep.
They have sausage races in the 7th inning. Sounds fun.
And then who's the guy who hit the sausage with his bat? He was a baseball player. He had a lot of problems. You know what I'm talking about?
Randall Simon.
That's absolutely right. He got in trouble because he bonked whoever was in the costume.
I
with his
haven't
bat.
thought about that guy in 15 years.
He was a dick.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you guys have said, it is actually a really big black book. But of course, you know, when you talk about the little black book, it's kind of what came to mind. So I did write it down as such.
That is the joke, too. I think Fonz might even call it his little black book when he pulls that thing out from wherever he has it.
Richie tells Fonzie, wait until the rest of my family leaves and then we can get into this. You know, Aunt Bessie just had a gallstone removal operation, so they're all going to be away the whole weekend visiting her, keeping her company, cheering her up. Fonzie is beside himself over this news because he's like, wait, you're going to have the house to yourself the whole weekend and you didn't mention this to me? She says, yeah, they're all going. Even Joni's going to be gone.
You guys, 17 years old, you get the house to yourself for a weekend. Best thing that could ever happen. And what I would do, like any cool teen, is I would rent a bunch of movies and order pizza.
Video games for me. But yeah, do you remember the time that we invited Kendall over and we did Jello shots?
Yeah, that
at
was
my house
amazing.
when Mom was gone, and we played Bill Lane Bear's Combat Basketball for the Super Nintendo.
One of the banner moments of our lives.
What a time.
Oh, to be young. As if that couldn't happen now. It could.
Fonzie tells Richie, look, you're going to live more this weekend than you have all 17 years of your life combined. This is going to be a huge thing. We get our first look at the rest of the Cunninghams here in this episode. We haven't seen them at all yet, but now we get each of them. We get Howard, Marion, and Joni all together, and they're all kind of getting dressed and getting ready to leave at the same time in the living room because that's the only thing they were allowed to do in this scene. Howard asks Fonzie, what are you so excited about? Because they came in towards the end of the conversation when Fonzie's freaking out about having the house to himself. Richie says, well, you know, he's just happy because Aunt Bessie's operation was minor and she's doing so well. Marion is impressed. She actually likes Fonzie. She's the only one in the show who calls him by his actual name.
Arthur.
Uh-huh.
She loves him throughout. It's, I think, a nice little wrinkle in
Nice,
the show.
sweet little touch.
She thinks that Fonzie always means well, and she is correct.
She's impressed with Fonzie's thoughtfulness here, even though it's not actually that. Joni wants to know why Richie doesn't have to go. Howard says, well, he's old enough to fend for himself. Joni says, well, not really. He
I don't
locked
think
himself out.
you did that right.
Huh?
What Howard says is he goes, well, he's old enough to fend for himself.
I forgot the Bosley effect.
Yeah. You got to flap when you say his lines.
Many scientists have approached trying to quantify the Bosley effect, but yet the numbers don't quite add up. No human's been able to replicate it.
The Large Hadron Collider couldn't figure it out.
You also have to manually reduce your speech to 0.6 times speed.
Joni calls out Richie for always locking himself out of the house when they're gone, and this is apparently a running gag that the show will be calling back on later.
Yeah, what a loser, locking himself out of a house.
This coming from the person who locked his keys in his car like 1 billion times when we were kids.
I did that too, a lot of times.
Did you?
Yeah.
Happened to me one time.
That's not true. What I do is...
Run out of gas.
Yes.
Sorry.
I did lock my keys in my car when I was 32 once, and it was traumatic. It's the only time I've ever done it, and I'll never do it again if I can help it. I also recently lost my ID for the first time.
Oh, you
Horrible
never did find
pain.
it, huh?
No, I got my new one, though.
Yep. Lost IDs.
What else have you done, Spencer?
Anymore, I don't have to worry about any of that because I just sit in my room all the time.
Have you climbed in a trunk lately?
No.
Been a while?
No, I don't think I could in the Fiat anyway. That thing is too small. When I used to lock my keys in my car in high school a lot, it was manual locks. So my dad would leave work and bring a coat hanger and shove it in the window and pop the lock from the outside. He did it so many times that one time after he finished, he got this proud smile on his face. He's like, I could break into cars for a living. It was quite a moment, though, because he was always kind of annoyed because he did have to leave work at a college university where he's doing PR stuff and then come basically jimmy my car open for me and then finding that satisfaction and being like, I'm really good at this.
And he probably saw the path not taken there, is that from then on he could have gone and turned his notice in at the university.
Stole a bunch of cars?
Yeah. Become unfathomably wealthy, like that guy in Magnum P.I., the jewel thief.
Why can't I
Gina
remember?
Davis's dad.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the cat burglar. What was his name? It doesn't matter.
Been too long. Gina Davis's dad.
Yeah.
I'll just settle for that.
Not Barth.
No, I would have said Barth if I met Barth.
Barth can unlock a swamp. We know that.
I broke out in a sweat just thinking about Barth.
And then you punched Spencer in the gut and ran.
So Joni's really mad that she has to go and Richie doesn't. Kind of like what Van mentioned, Joni's really mad in all of her scenes in these couple episodes that we get with her. Marion says, hey, calm down. I got you some cookies to eat in the car. This is an opportunity for the show to do 2 consecutive callbacks.
Good
where
joke.
They are good.
The cookies are crushed, Joni observes. And Marion says, yeah, it's the weirdest thing. Every time I go to the store, some old man shoves his shopping cart into me. It's a good little
Yeah,
callback.
I liked it.
So we laugh about that for a little bit. And then Howard says, well, why don't you just not go to that place? It's a bad supermarket. And Marion agrees. She says, yeah, you know what I heard is that this morning they even caught a woman shoplifting. And they're still looking for her accomplice,
Yes,
which of course is
pretty good.
Richie. So the Cunninghams are gone now. That's almost all we'll see of them for the rest of the episode.
Also, I have to give Katie cookies when we go on long trips. That's how I distract her.
You
in the
smash
car.
them up first?
It works. Oh, yeah. Well, no,
You
I don't
say
have
that-
to. It's a supermarket. It
Do
happens.
you say the same thing? Do you say like, this is so you won't get cranky in the car?
I do, and then I get hit.
Be placated.
So now we can begin Operation Double Date. It's in full swing. Fonzie cracks open that little black book. He immediately spots the girls he wants to enlist for this job. Laverne DeFazio, I think I said DeFazio in the beginning, but I think it should be DeFazio, and Shirley Feeney.
Like Mr. Feeney?
Yeah.
Huh.
Fonzie starts dialing the phone, which is a rotary phone of the time period, of course. Richie's worried they'll say no, and Fonzie says that's not going to happen. And this appears to be true as Fonzie successfully sets up this date in like 15 seconds of phone talk. It's very brief. He lets Richie introduce himself with just the word hi.
Which is smart.
Yeah, he doesn't let him talk too much. And then he sets up, hey, Arnold's tomorrow, 8 o'clock, be there. Hangs up. Done.
Technically says be there, whoa.
Oh, yeah, that's his other thing, right?
He loves
Whoa.
to say whoa at the end of sentences for emphasis.
But not in a Joey manner. Not like a whoa.
It's not a question like Doofus Joey poses, it's a statement.
And these are just Henry Winkler creations. Like a lot of the stuff that he did for the Fonzie was not scripted. He just decided he
that's
wanted
cool.
to do that. Apparently, he has dyslexia, but he wasn't diagnosed until he was 30. So he just thought he was kind of dumb growing up and couldn't read, and he didn't really even like to read scripts at all. So he did a lot of just made up stuff.
You know, the weird part of all this is that Joey on the show Blossom
Is also dyslexic.
Well, he was written off the show because I remember watching this episode when I was a kid, and he comes up and he tries to read a thing and he can't do it. And Blossom goes, Joey, why can't you read? And he goes, whoa, I'm dyslexic. And then he had to go to dyslexia
So he
camp.
diagnosed himself all of a sudden.
Apparently, I think he just really was just like, I can't read. So then they found out and then he was off the show. He went to dyslexia camp to solve it.
Serious business.
Was that the end of Joey being on that show?
Yes. Yeah, he was off Blossom from there on.
Huh.
And I think they had like one more season.
I never watched that show.
Oh,
I was under the impression he was like a mainstay guy.
He was there for like 80% of the run.
That's kind of funny that is how they chose to get rid of him, is he has dyslexia. We'll never see him again.
I will say that is both stupid and kind of creative. I've never heard that one.
That is the only time I've heard of that too.
Well, Six didn't have dyslexia, so she was still there. Her gimmick was she talked fast.
I think their name being a number would be enough of a gimmick.
So we're back at Arnold's again for the next scene. It's been a while, so it's good.
Who's Arnold? Is that the old flabby guy next episode?
No, I think he's just a server or a cook.
That's Al. He takes over the restaurant.
I see.
So they don't change the letter.
The owner is
that probably is why.
What's his name? The Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
We don't see him, of course, in either one of these.
I wish we had. I would have actually enjoyed that.
What's his name? Pat
Morita.
Pat
That
Morita.
guy.
And he was very, in wrestling parlance, over with the crowd in the way that Fonzie is.
Okay, I see.
Everybody erupted when he would pop on screen. They'd be
Sure,
like,
why not?
Whoa,
He's
Pat
fun.
Morita. And he was.
Karate
Or I
Kid.
remember him being, but I was hoping to see him. Wasn't about to watch extra episodes of this thing.
So our double date's about to begin. Ralph and Potsy are actually trailing very closely behind, both looking really excited to be a part of the action as much as possible. Ralph actually makes a case with Fonzie that why didn't he pick him to go on the double date with? Because he's cuter than Richie, he's got more freckles, he's got a whole bunch of things. I'm sure Van would agree that he's cuter than Richie and is just a great guy to look at.
I believe the line I wrote, which was, I was quoting him, I said, I'm cute, I'm witty, I have more freckles than him. And my little add to this, my stipulation is, yes, you're also a fiery monster.
Fonzie says it's honestly not about that. This is because Richie's really in need of charity. So we got to do this for him.
This is one of those weird sitcom tropes too. Other boys wanting to be involved in the sexual exploits of their friends, like know all about it and like hide out and hear it. It must just be a thing with some people. Like in Seinfeld, the diner conversations they'll have where
That's
like
true.
George wants to know what Jerry's doing.
Yeah.
Like, detailed too, not just that it happened.
The other thing I wrote here, by the way, about Ralph Mouth, I'm just going to call him
That's
that,
fine.
is that I said the hideous redheaded man won't stop chewing his fucking gum with his mouth open. The other one, Ponzi Scream, is doing it too.
Ponzi Scream.
I fucking hate this shit. Chew with your mouth closed. I do not like open mouth
You must have had a
gum
little bit of
chewers.
trouble with the rest of the episode then.
Yeah, because guess what? The two girls show up and then and it drives me batty.
And you know, the thing is, it actually, for them especially, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Because of who they are,
The
yes.
problem is the sound mixing is horrendous. It wasn't great at the time in television anyway. TV was thought of as a cheap shoot it and move on medium. Still is, kind of. But they didn't have the capability to do it, so you probably shouldn't be risking it, having people, like 4 characters chew gum the whole episode if you can't quiet it down.
Just close your mouth.
It does kind of take over the rest of the episode here as the gum chewing becomes a real central theme.
It did drift away for me after a little bit. I got used to it. Kind of like, I would imagine, if you were being tortured for information, after a while the pain wouldn't be as severe.
Well, and with Ralph and Fonzie, I don't care for them, so it bothers me more. With Laverne and Shirley, I at least find them interesting, so I can kind of gloss over it. It's like when we were discussing True Detective, and it's like, yeah, the snow looks stupid, but I like the story, I like the characters, I can ignore that.
If you're enjoying the thing and you're not really actually bothered by it, there's usually a reason, right? The elements add up to something that makes sense. This show doesn't have anything to distract you from when the things are bad.
I do admire the commitment to Ponzi at this point, too. I might just start doing it now on accident.
Bernie Madoff, he did all that. Stole some money from rich people. You can't do that.
So before the girls arrive, Fonzie takes a little time to give Richie a quick briefing on Shirley, which is, I'm just going to summarize it here in Fonzie's words. She's a cute girl, but a very different kind of girl. She's a little older, and not the type to give Richie a hard time, which he needs because he's in a slump and he needs to get out of it. Potsy and Ralph are hanging on to every word at this point and getting pretty excited about Shirley's description as if it's something they're also involved in. Fonzie had to shoo him away. Don't get the fuck out of here. We're talking about this date we're about to go on. Finally, after all this fanfare, in comes Laverne and Shirley. Laverne picks at Shirley's hair when they come in right away like a tick, like an ape sort of grooming
It's pretty
thing.
good.
And then calls out loudly for Fonzie even though they are at the table right by the door. Like screams full volume, Fonz.
We talked about this when we introduced the characters up top, but they feel like actually realized people.
It is amazing that this is just guest stars they just brought on and no one had ever seen them before. And here
so
they
this
are.
is their first appearance. Do they make other appearances on Happy Days?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were very popular too. Almost every character that shows up in Happy Days that you're like, this seems like a one-off. No, they come back. Even ones that you really wouldn't think so, like perhaps from other planets.
Alf.
Oh, I wish. Almost overlaps. Not quite.
Laverne approaches, plants a big old kiss on Fonzie. Shirley does what we will soon learn is her signature move of immediately going up to Richie and pressing her entire body against him, standing firmly at his shoulder as a greeting.
It is very cute.
It's really adorable, and it works perfectly because she's kind of bashful about it, but also that's a really forward thing to do. You're starting a date, and you just go right up to someone and smash your body against him.
She has a very open-hearted vulnerability that contrasts with Laverne's brashness.
It's very sweet and well-meaning, Shirley is. You can tell right away.
And by the way, I did watch a little bit of Laverne and Shirley as a kid, too, on Nick at Night.
I wonder what happened in that show.
Michael McKean's in it.
I like Michael McKean.
Yeah.
Honestly, it kind of sounds like that'd be a show that I would rather talk about than Happy Days.
I remember liking it okay. I mean, relative to Happy Days.
Sure.
Which I also liked okay because I was a child.
So the group takes their seat at the table. Potsy and Ralph are still trying to hover this entire time. Laverne actually takes over here and threatens to close, I think it's Ralph's eyes for good.
Good.
It just turns back there and says, get away from us. And
fuck him up.
It works.
What if that was it and Ralph was murdered and that's the end of Ralph Mouth?
Great.
I guess, yeah, you wouldn't have a problem with that, would you?
Nope.
So Laverne turns her attention to Shirley at that point, asks, what do you think of Richie right in front of him, openly? You've done worse. And Shirley likes his tie. Laverne says, hey, that's a nice hanky. Is that for showing or for blowing? Fonzie senses we've already done enough of small talk here, slaps the table and says, what an evening. Let's go to Richie's house.
And the girls don't bat an eye. That's the best part of it for me.
They don't really care about anything, honestly. Shirley actually wants to freshen up in the ladies' room, though, before they follow the guys to Richie's house. Some time alone outside while they go in there, Fonzie immediately jumps down Richie's throat and says, hey, you need to up your game. You haven't said a word this whole time. And Richie's like, I haven't had a chance, which is true. They've all been talking the whole time, especially Laverne and Shirley. And Fonzie's all bitching at him for not being charismatic enough.
Well, it's like if they had a group podcast, Richie would have to kind of really fight his way in there. Richie wouldn't be ideal for being on the podcast, though. Not like Ron Howard.
There are times, when you guys might be playing the role of Laverne and Shirley, and you might be finding yourself, Richie, me over here, and I'm, I don't really need to interject, but I haven't said anything in 5 minutes.
What are you talking about?
I'll bust your nose.
You shouldn't be so rude.
So Fonzie acknowledges, okay, yeah, you're right. Laverne and Shirley don't really leave much room for others to get into word edgewise. By the way, that's a nice tie, he says. It really brings some much-needed dignity to the occasion.
Thought that was funny.
Fonzie starts to explain that an evening out with Laverne and Shirley may actually need that dignity.
Usually Laverne and Shirley don't get along so good, and they
what?
Well, sometimes Laverne says something Shirley don't like, and they,
Hey, there's two girls beating each other up in there.
They fight, that's what they do, they fight. In there. It's settled, you see that?
So the battle's over. It was vicious but brief, and Laverne exits the bathroom alone first and approaches Fonzie.
Triumphantly.
She explains that Shirley didn't like her remark about Richie's tie, so she gave her something else not to like. She has a different description, but that's my Cliff Notes version. So finally, Shirley emerges from the bathroom, looking worse for the wear, a little defeated, and one of the straps on her dress is broken. She greets Richie with her signature move.
This was my favorite one. It was so good. She walks out and just beelines for him and just glance right into him. And it's adorable.
Every time she does it, it's always it makes you chuckle a little bit like, okay, yeah, I forgot about that. That's perfect. So Fonzie tries to smooth things over, and he really is making an effort here. He says, things got a little heated. It's fine now. Let's just enjoy the rest of the evening. And privately, when the girls disappear again, Richie says, I don't think I really like how violent things are getting right now. I don't like the girls beating each other up. And Fonzie says, this is just normal for them on Saturday nights. Besides,
this was revealing for me, and I know this. I've been diving into this, but I know for a fact I would be interested in this having happened.
So Fonzie says, besides, there's some other benefit of this, which is it kind of gets their blood up. And that's something that may benefit the boys later when their activities change to less innocent things.
This one was so blatantly made it sound like Fonz was talking about a species of animal that I laughed out loud without even thinking about it, because it just sounds so ridiculous. Oh, there's been a conflict among the women. Now their blood is up.
Here I am, Sir David Attenborough, and you see the women are battling one another.
The Laverne entered the restroom first, followed by the Shirley.
A noted battle cry echoes throughout Arnold's, the women folk themselves deciding who will get to mate.
I also liked how in the middle of Fonzie's explanation, which is you don't really know exactly what's going on, how the girl jumps out there and says, there's two girls beating each other up in the bathroom. Back at the Cunningham house, guess what Richie did? Callback opportunity. Locked himself out and had to climb in through the window. And he tears his pants on the way, by the way.
Well, they're coming off anyway, right?
Yeah, Shirley's going to see to that. He sees a mocking note from Joni, who placed it right by the window, anticipating this very moment.
Breaks a lamp, too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't he know a lamp is there?
I guess he's just so desperate to get in, he just doesn't give a shit at that point. Richie lets the others in. They're pounding on the door because it's a cold Milwaukee night out there. Fonzie instructs the girls, hey, make yourselves at home on that sofa, that hideous Cunningham sofa. And off to the side, he tells Richie, just say the code phrase, okay, Fonz, when you feel comfortable enough with Shirley, I will take Laverne, we'll go to my penthouse, and we'll get out of your guys' hair. So Richie accidentally uses that code phrase right away, just acknowledging to Fonzie, okay, I got it. I'll keep in mind that for when I want to use the code phrase. But Fonzie hears that as okay, Fonz, and is like, all right, he's comfortable, Laverne, let's get out of here. And they immediately depart through the kitchen.
Exit stage right.
Leaving just Richie, and I put Laverne, but of course, sure, that would be quite a twist if he ended up with Laverne after all that. So Richie's clearly ill at ease, but Shirley, to her credit, looks incredibly relaxed and friendly seated on that sofa. She motions for Richie to join her. He does, and she pulls him close, and Richie tries some more small talk, asking about her job, and that's where she gets into what Brian mentioned, where she is a bottle capper at Schott's Brewery.
I guess you needed people to do that at one point.
Another thing like that, and painting the supermarket signs, quaint jobs in this era.
We used to do things for work. It, wasn't just like being online.
There's something about that job sounding, it's just interesting. I don't know. It's got a fascinating kind of allure to it, a bottle capper at a brewery.
That's where they meet Lenny and Squiggy.
Squiggy.
He's the greasier of the two. Of he and
I would
Michael
assume
McKean is Lenny. I
I
don't remember who plays Squiggy.
Somebody greasy.
Does Michael McKean have a space blanket in Laverne and Shirley?
No.
That doesn't happen yet.
What's weird, though, is despite being very young, looks just like...
Oh, I bet.
His face just looks like that.
I like Michael McKean.
I do, too.
Richie's cufflink actually gets caught in Shirley's sweater, and it forces the pair unnaturally close, more so than Richie would have even considered.
She's a little into it, but also a little weirded out.
I think Shirley's kind of like, this doesn't seem like a thing this guy would do, but I guess I'm okay with it. And meanwhile, Richie's getting increasingly horrified because he's not meaning to do this at all. And he explains no, my cufflink's in your sweater. And at that point, Shirley actually panics a little bit because she just got this thing from the dime store, which is some kind of a joke that I didn't particularly get.
She's poor. It's cheap, yeah.
It looks like a perfectly nice sweater. I think she did a good job bargain shopping.
The 5 and dime. That's a thing that used to exist.
I've heard of the name. I know those were big deals back then.
There was one in Branson on the Strip not too long ago. Oh, of course, it cost a lot more than that.
No,
they still called themselves that. Had a bunch of crap in it.
Kind of like flea markets. They don't have fleas anymore, but they still call them that.
The good ones don't.
Good ones do. So the two work together, and they get off the sweater without damaging it. Shirley is so relieved that her sweater's in one piece that it's time to pull that signature move again with Richie. Richie is still nervous, but he does offer it. Shirley, would you like something to drink? Are you thirsty?
Oh, Shirley's thirsty. All right.
Shirley wants to loosen up the mood. She's like, I want a beer.
She's like, yeah, I'd like a Big Red.
That could be a brand of beer from this time period.
It is a soda.
It's gum.
I think I've had that now that you mention it. Richie heads to the kitchen to grab some snacks, grab a beer. He's actually going to bring her pretzels and chips, which I think is overkill.
He just keeps saying stuff to stave off the inevitable possible sexual encounter.
What's interesting about this is while he's doing that, Shirley is picking up after him because, like Van said, he broke the lamp, and she's like, wow, you had a rough night. And as Richie's putting together the snacks, you can see him kind of visibly relax a little bit. Like he's not as tense. And so he's like, you kind of had a rough night too, didn't you, Shirley? What actually happened between you and Laverne when you beat the shit out of each other in the bathroom? Shirley starts to go into the whole affair and actually just gives a full reenactment of the whole event, including the punch that she got from Laverne at the end. It's exactly during that punch that Richie returns into the room and walks blindly right into it.
She nails him.
Hits him right in the face. So he falls to the floor, drops everything that he just brought in there, all the snacks, all the beer, flies everywhere.
And finally, the camera, of course, zooms in. He's on the ground. She's consoling him. That's when I noticed the most hideous carpet I think I've ever seen. It's thick. It's green.
Ugh.
This is a nice house. Nothing in it looks good at all. It all looks pukey.
The shell is fine. The shell of the house, okay. Everything else is
got
gross.
good bones.
The style of the time,
that's right.
Kind of repulsive.
Well, like in that carpet, I mean, vacuum technology can't be good. It has to be filthy at any given moment.
And Ralph Malph's been in there.
I think the 70s did as good of a job as any decade at making sure your household was hideous on the inside. We've seen some garish homes in the shows we've covered. I remember being a little bit mortified by the Brady Bunch house, but in a very different way. That was like rich person's 60s house, California style. It had a weird vibe, but this is just ugly. Nasty little Cunningham house.
Nasty house.
Shirley, as Van said, feels terrible about punching him right in the face and falls to her knees to apologize. It's here things take a passionate turn. As in the process of comforting the wounded Richie, Shirley feels the need to, as she says, kiss a boo-boo. And they do kiss.
And Richie is something of a boo-boo on humanity.
In the middle of the kiss, the Cunningham family bursts through the door, led by Tom Bosley, of course, and immediately shout, "Richie, we're home!" Only to discover Richie and Shirley are right at the door, directly underfoot as the Cunninghams enter.
Making out.
Going right at it. Both parents desperately cover little innocent Joni's eyes to spare her the horror.
And that's putting it lightly. They clamp their hands on her face to cover her eyes, and it's frightening looking that anyone would do that to another human.
This is what my mom asked my dad to do when we went to see Tin Cup in the theater.
When those boobs showed up.
He didn't do it, though.
No, he was like, I'll let my boy learn.
He needs to know about those.
Despite the chaos that abounds everywhere at this point, they did a little under the radar moment where everyone's screaming and doing stuff, and all the while Richie is introducing Shirley to them, and they both shake her, both Howard and Marion shake her hand as they're all screaming.
This scene was very unexpected for me in that way, in that the parents act very rationally. They shake Shirley's hand and introduce themselves, and they're not really mad.
They're more startled.
They kind of do the same thing next episode when they find someone unexpected in their house. So let's shake hands. Oh, is this an alien? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a crazy thing to think. Probably from a fraternity.
Howard in particular does get a little more perturbed by the alien scene a little toward the end of it, but yeah, initially they're kind of like, oh, the stranger's in the home.
I can't imagine why, but we'll get to that.
Just next week on the Boob Tube Boys.
I don't know what would be annoying about it.
Richie loudly asks his family to give him some privacy so he can say goodnight to Shirley, and they acquiesce. They actually do, despite all the pandemonium, they do leave. They give him privacy. They all go up
and
the
they
stairs
get that.
together.
They're like, we don't know what happened, but clearly they need a moment to themselves.
So the pair is finally alone again, and Shirley remarks, well, it looks like you're in some trouble. Richie's like, some. And she's like, probably a lot. And he agrees, yeah, a lot. I am of the belief that I think the Cunninghams are just going to be pretty cool about it. The way they act.
Probably so.
But, Richie seems to think he's going to be in quite a bit of trouble for it. Shirley says, honestly, no big deal. It's probably for the best. And as she starts to gather her things, Richie approaches her and says, what do you mean? And she observes, you didn't really seem like you were really that into the date to begin with, like it wasn't your idea. And Richie says, yeah, honestly, it was kind of Fonzie's doing, but I really do like you. And Shirley's understanding. She gathers her things, tells him, well, tell you what, I'm going to make it easy. Give me a call if you want to go out again. And that way I'll know it's your idea. Richie's actually kind of dumbfounded because he says, like, you actually would go on another date with me again? And she says, yeah, of course. A girl would be nuts not to go out with a guy as cute as you.
Very generous.
All that dignity. Yeah. I thought that Shirley could not have possibly handled such a crazy end to the night any better than
Handles
she did.
it great. Laverne and Shirley come across as very empowered women for this
Yeah.
show taking place in the 50s.
Which they did so casually.
Yeah.
Just dropped him in there and pulled that off. With that being said, Richie seems to actually be pretty excited about seeing Shirley again and says, hey, can I have a goodnight kiss? And they share a steamy 50s kiss on the way out. And the episode kind of ends on this, but we get a few more jokes here, which is, I didn't even mention this early in the show, Laverne and Shirley don't have insurance. They're driving uninsured. Shirley's going to leave and Laverne's going to have to hitchhike later. Richie says, hey, drive carefully since you don't have insurance. That's another callback. And then one final callback and going outside to say goodbye to Shirley. Richie's locked himself out of the house again. And the episode ends.
That's it.
And then the record spins and we're done.
Happy days.
Halfway
Happy days
done.
indeed.
So I think we covered what we liked about the episode, which is Shirley and Laverne.
Yep.
And they made a whole show about that. So as far as the main show, probably not a whole lot else to say. We covered it. I will tell you up front, I am just going to get this out of the way. It's okay if you guys disagree. I vehemently despise the next episode, and I don't feel like the guest star celebrity saved it, so I actually much prefer this episode.
Well, the next episode, I may have dropped a little hint. I think a person could find to be, I'll use a few adjectives, grating, annoying, frustrating.
Cool as hell.
Yeah, that's another
I'm
possibility.
excited to discuss this one. This is, of course, a much more standard plot for a 70s show, but
and
50s
much
setting.
more, I would say, emblematic of this era of Happy
Sure.
Days.
And I was okay with it. Obviously, it's not fantastic or anything, but it's kind of what I thought it would be. And so I said our celebrity, who we're not going to name yet, couldn't bail the next one out. I personally felt like Laverne and Shirley did quite a bit to bail this one out, and what would have been a really bad episode otherwise.
Yeah, if they were played by someone with less charisma, either character or both characters, not as fun.
But they really stand out. And I would also argue that this use of Fonz is better. It's limited, it's in bursts, it has a consistent character with no magic powers.
He's a bit of a hero in the next one, and
Yeah.
just I think his superpowers are being so cool.
Well, you can see in the next one how the show has evolved to be the Fonzie show because he's considered this god, essentially.
Yeah.
And there's a catch to it and blah, blah, blah. We'll get into it. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think this is a better episode overall. I think maybe we'll have more fun making fun of next
You're probably right
episode.
about that.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a great time. This is another one of these sitcoms that are just, they're very popular, but they are very empty calories.
That's fair.
Let me say this, and I was going to save it for next episode, but Family Matters, which we just covered, was, there wasn't a whole lot to it,
Nope.
although it was kind of fun to watch. I got through an episode of Family Matters and went, wow, it's already over. I got through an episode of Happy Days and went, my God, that seemed like 3 hours long. Both of them.
I had the same experience, and how much of that is that we got to do a real 90s, childhood relive?
I think there's a lot of that involved for sure.
But I also do think the cast is a lot better, and that gives it, there's more to watch because everyone seems more likable and more like they're an actor.
The first part I agree with. The first half of the episode didn't have much. It drug really bad. I was not a fan of it. All the scenes that went to set up the double date, no good. That second part, once Laverne and Shirley came in, I really enjoyed that last part. And it's
It was
like
a lot
the
more
last,
bang,
the
bang,
last
bang,
10,
too.
12 minutes, and I'm really good with that.
That's the other thing, Spencer. It is only like 10 minutes of the 23 or whatever that Laverne and Shirley are even in.
And those 10 minutes that the episode ends on are a lot more enjoyable. So it ended on a positive enough note to where I was like, okay, that's fine. That's about what I expect. It's not like I thought I was going to be like, Happy Days is awesome. So when I finished that one, I was like, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And then we had what we're going to do next week, which, like Van said, it's going to be interesting, if nothing else. And I'll just leave it at that. But big celebrity guest star. Not going to tell you who it is, and you'll never guess. So before we do end the episode officially, though, I mentioned bootuing.com earlier. There's some other stuff that you can find of the Boob Tube Boys on the internet. First of all, you're probably a big fan of YouTube. I bet you're always on there watching instructions and tutorials and learning stuff on YouTube. And maybe you're bored before you go to bed and you want to watch something on there. Anyway, Boob Tube Boys is on there too. There's also a Patreon feed where we do episodes that aren't on our main feed. They're bonus contents. It's all free. You can donate if you want to help our cause.
Sometimes Johnny Radical sends us things.
We've talked about just about every kind of extra subject you can imagine on that, just stuff you wouldn't hear on the main feed. So that's patreon.com/Bootu Inc. Another thing you should do for us, you should go to your podcast platform of choice and give us a 5-star review.
Yeah, please do that.
I would love for you to hear this episode, connect with Happy Days, and give us all the 5-star reviews
We'll
you
get
can think
tattoos
of.
of Laverne and Shirley.
Oh, yeah. That's a great idea. All right. With that being said, I'm going to save my Fonzie impersonation for next time. I think we'll all give it a shot, but let's wait till the very end on that one. So for now, I don't have any ideas on how to end it. You guys want to blurt something out? Oh, the Bosley sound.
That's my Tom Bosley noise, and it was
pretty
the
good.
worst. Yeah, Brian's face is perfect, and it was the worst noise.
Let me
I've
try
ever
it.
made. I hear it.
Okay.
Brian?
I'm not fucking doing that.
I just got Bosley spit everywhere.